Okay, write a static method named CoinFlip that accepts as its parameter a scanner for an input file. Assume that the input file data represent results of set of coin flips that are either heads or tails in either upper or lower case, separated by at least one space. Your method should consider each line to be a separate set of coin flips. So it means we are going line by line. That's give you a hint when it says each line is separate. So it means we have to use the has next line method. Output to the console number of heads and the percentage of heads in that line, rounded to the nearest tenth. If this percentage is more than 50%, you should print a message, you win. For example, consider the following input file. So this was your file, and every line has a separate percentage. So they are not connected to each other. So if you have, as you can see, the last line has only one heads, which makes it 100%. So you win kind of a situation. The second one has head and tail combination. Third one has head and tail combination. The second line have more tails. So that's why the percentage is 33%. Depending on how many heads and how many tails, it's kind of how many flip you make of that coin. The format of your output must exactly match that's shown above. You may assume that the scanner contains at least one line of input, that each line contains at least one token, and that no token other than head or tail. So we are assuming, it is mentioned in our question, there are no other garbage value in our file, only head and tail, and they're separated by a space, and we are assuming there's not an empty file, and every line have some input, even if you have only one head in a file. Okay, so let's get started. Stop the share. Let me share my clips. Any questions regarding to the question mentioned? Anything which is confusing? Does it give you the idea how to get started? Any questions before we start? Okay, so let's get started. What we have is a public static method. Let's write our static method over here. So it's a public static. And what is the return type? What we are returning? What we are returning? We are returning a void, and we are not returning anything. When it is mentioned that don't no return keyword or anything, you must return something, it means it's a void method. CoinFlip is our method name, and what we are accepting from user is a scanner input and starting curly braces and ending curly braces. Okay, now what is our next step? We have this CoinFlip. What we are looking for, this input, this scanner is holding a file, and this input object is referring to a file with head and tail situation. We are looking for heads. So if we have more heads in that file or in that line, so we are going line by line. That's the one thing we need to check. So if we are going line to line, it means we have to do the line scan. Because when we have the line, we have to scan that line for according to our condition, according to our situation. So in our situation, what we are scanning that line is for the head, looking for head and tail letters. So our first while loop will be while input dot has next line. So we have a line, input dot has next line. So it means this is our major while loop. So we're going line by line. Now, as we have the line, it means we have to scan that line. First of all, take the line. To take the line, we'll call it as another scanner line scan. That's what we call. You can give any name you want, equals to new scanner to scan that line. And what we will pass in that scanner is this whole statement, this input. I'm just avoiding extra statement, input dot, it will be next line, take the line, and so that it can increment. So this has incremented after this input dot next line. Our cursor in our file has moved to our next line, and you can put it to uppercase as mentioned in our question, that make sure that you follow the pattern the pattern according to the output. So if you take a look in the output, all the heads and tail letters are in capital letter. So that's how we have to print. So just to make it to uppercase, I'm just avoiding, it's like 3 separate lines of code, which I have combined in one line. How 3 separate lines? One line is to create this scanner line scan. The other line is to take a separately string input dot lines next line. And the third to make it to uppercase. So you can just combine all 3 in one like this. Now we have to do a count. We have to count heads. We have to count tails. We have to count tails as well because we have to take the average percentage, right? So we have to take the percentage. We have to count how many heads were there and how many tails were there. So it means the count will be equals to 0. It will be an integer data type as we are doing because it's just counting 1 to 3, right? So there is no double and no string, anything else. So int heads, int tails, and what else we have to count? You have to do the total. Instead of tail, it's the total, how many heads were there and how many total, because this we don't need to count the tails because we have to count the total because we are not taking the percentage of tails. But if you want to take the percentage of tails, you can also count tails as well. While what? What will be your next while loop? While what? Remember, we are on line 1. So we are going through that line 1. You have the question in front of you. You have heads, you have tails. While what? While what? What will be your inner while loop? What we have to go through in that you're scanning the line. While, how long you have to scan that line? While line scan dot has next. Yes, while line scan dot has next. Line scan is the one who's holding your line. So while line scan has a word or a character to read, run this loop, right? So what we are looking for that in that line. So as your as long that line scan has next, it means total plus plus. We saw a word or we saw a character, total plus plus, and then if you have to check if line scan dot next, which is because we have to do the increment as well, which we haven't done, dot next dot equals to, because equals over here, if equals to, what's the character we are looking for? H. So if it's equals to H, then heads plus plus. That's how we do heads plus plus. And this is where my if condition ends. This is where my inner while loop ends. So after my inner while loop ends, over here, as you have seen, we have to do or print the percentage line by line. So this is where our line 1 ends. So if when line 1 ends, it means we have to calculate the percentage, because if we don't calculate or print the percentage here, it will reset and only print once for the last line we have. We have to print it for every line. So when you have to print it for every line, this outer while loop is in charge. So it means we have to, before this outer while loop ends, we have to do the task inside. Double percent, that's how you calculate the percent. You do 100.0 times as percentage will be in double. Heads times, what is our heads? Small letter heads. Heads divided by total and semicolon. Then we can print system.out.print. You can say printf to follow the format. Double quotation marks, we'll say %d heads, which will, I will, if you don't remember, I can go over it, 0.1f. I want one number after the decimal point, and that's it. %.1f and \n, make it a new line, double quotation marks close, comma, and now for %d I want heads to be printed, comma, and % to be printed at %1.1f, semicolon. Yes, okay. And now we have to print another message. So that is if %, we don't know what the % will be. So if % is greater than 50, it means we have to print system.out.println. That's how we'll print that you win, right? If the percent is greater than 50%. Else will be the case, do nothing, don't print anything, so we don't have to write the else. System dot, I think that's it. Or we can put a separate line, one more statement, you win, or you can do \n here just to make a cool format. I think that's it. Let's test our file, because let's put some data in our file to test if our data is correct or not. Let me pull up the data we have. I'll change it to hours.txt, the same file. Let's change the same file. I'm following the same format, H, T, H, H, T, enter, T, T, space, T, T, H, H, and space, H. Control S, don't forget to do Control S. Go in file test, and CoinFlip is our name, method name. Go back to your main method and CoinFlip, flips. No, what's the method name? CoinFlip is the method name, capital F. And passing our input, reading the file. Let's run our code. And as you can see, it says 3 heads is, what was it, 60%, you win. 2 heads, 33%, you win. 1 head, 100%, you win. 0 heads, I think I have just added an extra space in our file when I was doing an enter. Yeah, just like this one, it's counting 0 heads and giving us another kind of situation, but that was an extra space. So our code perfectly runs fine. Take a look at the code. Any questions so far? We are reading CoinFlip scanner input. We have our next line as we are going line by line. Whenever you are going line by line, you scan the line scan, new scanner, you're taking the line, you're converting it to uppercase if there are any lowercase letters, and then total int heads, counting total heads, as we have to print the percentage of the total number of heads, and we have to do a total as well. Then we have to, as we are scanning the line, we have to check how many characters we have in our line. If we have any word, we will do total plus plus. After doing total plus plus, we'll check if that word is equals to H, then it means it's a head, and do head plus plus. After running, going through the whole line and counting total heads and total number of characters and total heads, we will calculate the percentage outside. And this is the formula to calculate the percentage. Then we print the heads and the percent. And if the percent is greater than 50, then we are printing you win. Otherwise, we are just printing heads, total number of heads, and the percentage of those heads. That's it for for this question. Any questions so far?